What's up everyone, Path of Exile 2's first big patch, The Dawn of the Hunt, now has a full set of patch notes. I've gone over this a couple of times and they are heavy. Not just in the sheer amount of patch notes we have and the amount of things that are changing, but the things that are changing are heavy hitting. If you're playing a build right now that feels really good and it's performing really, really well, it likely won't be in a couple of days. The nerfs are coming for everything that was performing really well and some things that weren't even performing like better than everything else. I don't think anything's safe from these big nerfs that are coming. And they weren't just going for, one thing to nerf. They nerfed these things in all areas. They were like nerfing ascendancies, passive points, the uniques themselves. Everything got nerfed here. So there's some big changes. So let's go over it. And I will just say, I haven't played every single build. I haven't played every single ascendancy. So I'm going to go over this as best I can. But if you think you can explain something better, let people know down below. And if I make any mistakes, call me out on it down there. So let's get into this. Okay, so first let's talk about the big builds to the current meta builds in the game right now, because these are the things that most people are going to be upset about. These are the things that most people are going to be complaining about. I've already seen people read these patch notes and say, well, I'm done. I'm not playing anymore because my build's been nerfed. It probably has. If you're playing a very popular endgame build that everyone's been talking about, it has probably been nerfed. So let's talk about that first. The biggest one that most people have really ramped with is stat stacking. This was massive on Invokers and Gemling Legionnaire. You basically took strength decks in, you ramped them all up as high as you could. You took the Hands of Wisdom and Action, you took the chess piece, you took the quarterstaff, and you just defeated everything in the game. Well, it got nerfed in all areas. How those points are generated and how those different stats scale got nerfed. The hands alone. So if I'm just going to filter around like this. If we go Wisdom. The Hand of Wisdom and Action gloves now adds 1 to 10 lightning per 20 int, previously 10, so that's like halved. Now provides 1% attack per 20, previously 3% per 25, like almost that got thirded, like 2/3 of that cut off. So massive nerf. Things like the quarterstaff, what was the quarterstaff called? Quarterstaff was the Pillar of the Cage God. This now provides 1% increased attack speed per 10 dex and 1% area of effect, previously 2%. It also provides 10% increased weapon damage per 10 strength, previously 10% per 5 strength. That got halved. So they're the kind of nerfs we're talking about. It's not just the stats, it's all the items that went along with them. And I think this is a good and bad thing, because on the good side, it means that more builds can flourish. If you take away the overly dominant, the thing that's like massively powerful than everything else, more things can come up and be playable, and you don't feel as bad for not playing it. But on the downside, it is sad seeing them nerf uniques and nerf like end game chase items. If something was a drop from an end game boss and it got nerfed, you're less incentivized to chase that boss. So, good and bad. Another big nerf is Archmage Sorceress, massive nerf. If you look at Archmage and how that works, it was basically you take as much int as possible, and then when you've got loads of int, you deal more damage the more int you have. So you just pulled it as high as possible, one-shot the screen pretty much. They've reduced this. I won't go into too much detail on the numbers, but you can see really simply, non-channeled spells gain 3% of damage as extra lightning damage for each 100 mana, was 5 to 6, and then you look at like the mana cost, 6.1%, was 5.3 to 5. So it's basically just a big nerf, but it's not just a nerf on the skills themselves. If you look at the item section, so if we just type in like mana, and then we go down to the item section, you'll see there's loads of reductions in mana. You can see down here, look, all of the ways that these roll on the different items. So belts, gloves, helmets, wands, rings have this now. Can only roll up to that much max mana. So the amount of mana we can get on all our items has been scaled down. So we can't just go endgame, Archmage, get all the mana, deal crazy amounts of damage. So there's that. Also, if we look at Eldritch, how do you spell Eldritch? Eldritch Battery. Eldritch Battery Keystone passive now has the additional property of doubles mana cost. That build is just gone. It's going to be, well, not gone, but it's going to be significantly weaker. Okay, massive nerf here is the Herald skills. The effects of Herald skills can no longer trigger from other Herald skills. If you didn't know, you could take any build in the game, get the Lightning and the Ice Herald, flip the skills between each other, and then they trigger each other and wipe the whole screen. Take a warrior and throw on, double Herald, and you have the best warrior build, clears tier 15 maps. It's a Herald build. This was way too powerful, and I think this is a good change. But if your build was relying on it, you're going to log in 2 days to try and play that build, and it won't work. So yeah, that's big. Tempest Spell took a massive hit. You know, the damage and how they proc has been reduced. The number of bells placed is now been reduced, so you can't do the you know, you get multiple of the Tempest Spell gems, and then you drop multiple bells. There's also a reduction in how long they can trigger a shockwave every 250 millisecond delay. So big nerf to that. Overall, just lots of the big endgame things that we were seeing to just destroy the entire screen in seconds, destroy the bosses in seconds, have all been massively nerfed. And the way they're nerfing these builds, they're kind of doing it all over. These aren't the only nerfs. So I'm not going to go through every single one. You know, it was 1.6, now 1.4. I'm not going to go through every single line. There's plenty of people that are doing like patch read-alongs. You can go check that out. But that's like an hour-long video. I just want to tell you that lots of the meta builds are getting nerfed. If you're playing a certain build and you're really, really enjoying it, and you're planning to keep playing it in 2 days and check out the end game, just be prepared. It won't feel the same. What I would do is if come on here, look for your build. Say you're playing a minion build, Control F, minion, and look at your 30 changes because there's a lot of nerfs. And then, you know, try and plan how your build's going to look or the changes that you might want to make based on the buffs and the other things in the patch notes. Yeah, lots and lots of huge changes. The game's going to look very different in a couple of days. And now, rather than just like talking about nerfs, some things have been completely removed and reworked, which is really interesting. So if we look at something like Grim Feast can no longer be engraved in the gem cutting menu. Existing Grim Feast gems have been disabled, and we'll rework this in the future. So anyone planning to use Grim Feast, or if it's in your build right now, find something to replace it. This was one of the best ways to work with your energy shield. It basically like you would defeat enemies, they would drop things, you pick them up, and it would almost double your energy shield. If you had these other ways to really boost your energy shield, which have also been nerfed, you combine that with Grim Feast and your energy shield skyrockets, and you can take those hits from bosses much earlier than you probably should have been able to. Not only are they nerfing it, they're just removing it, which I find very strange. And now they're reworking the passive tree. They're changing how the passive tree looks, and they're adding lots of new stuff to it. So you can see here, they're adding in lots of new clusters for skills relating to different things. So you've got like parry, bleed, ranged and melee, things like that to accommodate the Huntress. And then we've got like blind, companion, banner, thorns, things like that. So really interesting, very, very interesting. The game itself, like the how the builds look and the knowledge we've got so far is gonna need to grow because the game is changing a lot. So this is really exciting. There's lots of changes to the skill tree coming. And not only are they reworking things like that, they are also reworking some of the ascendancy skills. So again, very important if you're playing a specific ascendancy, look at the ascendancy section here and look for the character you are planning on playing or the character you're already playing and see what the changes. Things like Gemling Legionnaire, there was a thing where the implanted gems ascendancy passive no longer provides +1 to all levels of skills. Instead, it now provides a choice between +2 level of all skills with strength, +2 with dex, or +2 with int. So rather than stacking everything, you kind of have to choose a specialty. There are lots of changes to the Pathfinder and how the elixirs and things like that work, and they're going to change a new multi-choice practical remedies passive skill that gives you the ability to select the type of immunity you want. So there's lots of like big changes to how those ascendancies read completely. So if you log in, you might have to go in and see that the point you chose before doesn't look the same anymore. So be aware of that for sure. And then one big change that you might not be aware of if you just skimmed through, you could have easily missed this. If we look at Jewel, here you go. 12 Jewel sockets have been removed from the passive skill tree. Existing characters with jewels in these sockets can reclaim their jewels to their inventory. So yeah, one of the most powerful end game chase items was running the trials and the things like that and getting these like end game bis jewels, and you would have like these jewels and some powered up other jewels and some powered up all the things around them. 12 sockets have been removed. This is huge, and we don't know where on the map that is. Is it all like in a certain section? We don't know. So that's big. And then some of the big like end game jewels themselves have also been nerfed. So Against the Darkness now has a medium radius, previously large. This change does not affect existing items. Modifiers that cause skills in range grant 2 to 4, at values of 2 to 3. Against the Darkness jewel no longer causes small ones to grant 1% increased max life or 1% max mana. Instead, they cause small ones to give +8 to +8 mana. So you can see here, like instead of 1%, it's a single number. So yeah, the gem meta, the jewel meta of like stacking these really powerful jewels seems to be going away a little bit. And you know, you can look and grants 5 to 10%, previously 10 to 20, 2 to 3 was 3 to 7, just a nerf all around. I personally am probably one of the only sad few people who love the trials. I love the Trial of Chaos. I run that all day. So I kind of like farming the jewels and stuff, but I know a lot of people don't. So this might be a good change. This is one I'm not happy about, but you know, I think it's probably healthy that you don't have to live in the Trial of Chaos if you don't want to. Okay, so what's the new meta? What are the new best builds? And what is, you know, the S tier ascendancy? Who should you pick as your new character? What you're going to play in, you know, Dawn of the Hunt? No idea. No idea. And I'm not going to clickbait you. I'm not going to lie to you. I've got no clue. I've got no idea. And most people probably don't, because you can look through here and you can see the buffs. You can see, you know, Titan, 50% more damage was 40. 25% more damage was 20. And you can do that on pretty much everything. Witch Hunter, 40% more damage to enemies was 30. Lots and lots of buffs going all around to lots of different classes. You can look at things like crossbows. Crossbows now do increased damage, and they do, the damage modifier is of a two-handed weapon instead of a one-hander. So massive boost to crossbow damage, and you'll see a lot more crossbow builds, hopefully, which is good. But we don't know how it all falls. We don't know how all these buffs and, you know, all these buffs to all these different skills are going to fall when compared to the rest of the game. We don't know what these 100 new support gems are going to be, or what they're going to look like. We don't know what, you know, when you go to the where's the passive screen? The passive changes. What are these? What's these cluster of ranged abilities? What's this cluster of parry abilities? Cluster of banner abilities? We don't know. Maybe there's an incredible bleed build that's going to be like the BIS bleed build for leveling, the BIS bleed build for endgame. We don't know. So yeah, you know, we don't really know exactly what's happening because we haven't seen everything and how it plays with all the new stuff. And you know, no one's played it yet. You know, this isn't like the release of the game where lots of people got early access and we were digging through it all, trying to work out what was going to be the best. We really are pretty much blind here. So I would say play what you enjoy. So I'd say just play something that you enjoy, play something fun, play something that you think you're going to enjoy, regardless of, you know, what the meta is going to be. Because we really just don't know. If you like fast builds like the Huntress, Invoker, Ranger, play something like that. There will likely be some fun builds in them that do pretty well. It looks like what they're doing here is a big squish down of the top end so that lots of the mid-range can hold out. But we'll still see someone break the game. Someone's going to make some meta build that one-shots the whole screen and one-shots bosses. And if you want to go and re-roll to that later, you can. Lots of people made their build in the early game, and then after a couple of weeks, they re-rolled to Gemling Stat Stacker, and we can do that again now if we want. But yeah, I just play something fun. It looks like a lot more things are going to be viable. So yeah, that's it really. Thank you for watching. This hasn't been like a patch note read along. Just wanted to inform you that big nerfs are coming, and what you're planning, you know, if you're planning to keep playing your character in the new season, it might not be as simple as you think. You might have to really rework the build, but hope you find this useful. Do consider subscribing if you want to see more. Lots of builds, lots of guides coming out in a couple of days. Thank you for watching. Take care. I'll catch you in the next one.